As much as I hear it mentioned, I swear The Handmaid's Tale is an erotic fantasy for these people. No, would you like me to explain The Handmaid's Tale? I'll give it to you really quickly. The Handmaid's Tale it takes place in the fictional world of Gilead. Fictional ladies, the fictional world of Gilead. Okay. The reason why The Handmaid's Tale has been such a sort of a cultural phenomenon is because it plays on the existential fear of women. And what that is it's this fear that women would be forced to have babies that are not of their choosing, which is basically the entire premise of The Handmaid's Tale, right? These women have to wear their little red frocks and their little white nun, outfits. They're essentially breeders, right? They're supposed to have babies for important men, right? Or men in general, right? And it's basically this forced breeding program. And women, this is their death fantasy. They love this shit. And whenever you see fiction that is, especially today, there's two forms of female fiction today. One is the romance novel. And that's formulaic and it's been well studied. We know what that formula is. The other one is the sort of the female death fantasy, meaning like this, we're in the state of female oppression. And I'm glad you brought this up because I wanted to point this out at some point during this show, that the existential fear of women is to be forced into like an arranged marriage, to be forced into having a child that is not of their choosing, to have the control over hypergamy removed from them, meaning that they're the ones who are going to do the decision making and the filtering. And that's and really since the advent of hormonal birth control and the rise of the sexual revolution, which, by the way, we're still in. This is an experiment, a social experiment that we're still in today, is the sexual revolution. So it's not gone. It's just it's morphed into something new in the 21st century. But the sexual revolution essentially places the responsibility and the authority for the human reproductive process in the hands of one sex. And I build on this in some of my books. I talk about this in a lot of my Substack. I've talked about this on the Rational Male, my blog, for quite some time. But the existential fear of women is to have that choice of who they're going to have babies with, either limited or compromised or completely removed in the form of grape. For instance, you want to know one other, women say it's invasive and it's I'm trying to think what else. It's an affront. It's a crime, right? And I understand. I completely agree, right? But the reason why it's so compelling for women is because of that existential fear. They might have to have a child that they didn't choose. This is also why during any election cycle, and whether it's a midterm or a general election, the leftist Democrat wokesy side of the aisle is always going to play on those fears. And that's why you still have The Handmaid's Tale. That's why you still have things like, and by the way, if it's not The Handmaid's Tale, it'll be something that's similar to that. It's the female oppression fantasy. And then of course the miraculous overcoming of it, right? So suddenly the main character has had enough and she cuts off the head of her oppressor and she rises up and all the other women rise up and they take over and they destroy their evil, tyrannical oppressors, right? And that's pretty much been the female death fantasy for a long time. But it all revolves around the notion or the fear, the existential fear of women losing control over their reproductive imperatives. And I think particularly in light of 65 years of the sexual revolution, where we've empowered women not only financially and economically and educationally and everything, that we've sort of given them this carte blanche. We don't realize that womankind in general has pretty much the eugenic control over the human reproductive process right now. And of course, something that a topic that they'll avoid. But the reason why those types of fans, and by the way, Handmaid's Tale is not exclusive to Handmaid's Tale. There's other ones. Like I brought this up one time. It was if you ever saw the what was it? Oh, I know it was the movie Black Widow, when they finally gave what with Scarlett Johansson, a shot at a
Yeah.
solo movie, and it was Natasha, right? It's a Black Widow. If you look, I don't know who the villain in that was supposed to be, but he looked a lot like Harvey Weinstein. He absolutely did. And when you look at like the spies who were like sort of brainwashed by the evil Harvey Weinstein character,
Mm-hmm.
they were very much akin to his quote unquote victims. That was, you were meant to get that sort of as an allegory or metaphor. Like he kind of looks like that, and this is what he's doing. And then it takes Natasha or Black Widow to wake these women up, who then, of course, rise up. They realize that they're being manipulated by the evil Harvey Weinstein bad guy character, and of course they kill him, right? And in any of these sort of female revenge fantasy movies, death fantasy, revenge fantasy movies, there's always a character that is the evil bad character that in real life they don't have any control over. They're powerless against. And so in the fantasies, in the fiction, they overcome that and they strike back, right? They get theirs, and then the villain goes down, right? It's never a classic fantasy. It's never good versus evil. It's never like hero's journey or anything like that. It's always, this is the bad guy. He looks kind of like one of the bad guys that we've seen and in real life, and this will be sort of your catharsis, ladies. And so that's really what The Handmaid's Tale is about. And so when you look at that, I mean, you're never going to look at female fiction again the same way, I suppose. But that's what it comes down to. I don't know if necessarily that's an erotic fantasy, but I suppose it could be in some senses.